everyone. I'm Wayne Motts, the President Emeritus and historian of the Gettysburg Foundation, and you've often heard the adage, a rose between two thorns. Well, I gotta say this morning that I am the thorn between two roses, and here they are. So I'd like to introduce two of my friends, two colleagues, great folks, and that's John Hoptak, Gettysburg National Military Park educator, and Gene Green, historian. And we're here at a special place for a new series that we're doing at the Gettysburg Foundation called Behind the Scenes at Gettysburg, an inside look at the Gettysburg National Military Park. And we are standing on the porch of the rehabilitated James Warfield House for Black History Month for February. John, why don't you tell us a little bit about where we are? How about you sort of put it in context before we start?
I'll try my best, Wayne, and thank you for that.
Right, you bet.
So we are, as Wayne mentioned, standing on the front porch of the James Warfield House, one of the most incredible vistas, I think, views on the entire battlefield. And I think we're so lucky that we're able to do this, that this place has recently been rehabilitated to its 1863 footprint. We are about 2 miles south of the town of Gettysburg, about a mile, just over a mile west of Little Round Top, and about 500 yards from the peach orchard. James Warfield had purchased this property just a few months before the battle, and on the afternoon of July 2nd, this entire area would have been transformed into just a vast, horrific killing zone. Today's tranquility and the quietness here kind of betrays the intensity of the combat that took place. So July 2nd, late afternoon, about 7,000 Confederate soldiers under the command of Lafayette McLaws arrived just to the west of the Warfield property. James Warfield and his children have left their homes by this point. And what happened was that afternoon, Robert E. Lee had anticipated, he envisioned a crushing attack against the Union left flank here, just to the east of us. But when these Confederate soldiers arrived, they found that flank is not where they expected it to be. So they had to replan, they rescheduled, or they reformulated their plan of attack. And just to our south, John Bell Hood's division would have stepped off to the attack, heading toward that hilltop called Little Round Top and Devil's Den just to its front. While just immediately here to our south, these fields would have been alive with artillery fire, E.P. Alexander's battalion of artillery. And then that evening, as July 2nd is beginning to fade, about 2,300 South Carolinians under Joseph Kershaw will strike head-on at the peach orchard here to the east, while another 1,600 or so Mississippians under William Barksdale sweep right through this area to engage Union soldiers positioned around the Sherfy farm and the Emmitsburg Road just to our front. So this area would have seen just Confederate soldiers stepping off to the attack, but we are just on an incredible piece of property here at Gettysburg.
So for the viewers that have been on the Gettysburg battlefield many times, we're at the southern end of the battlefield along Seminary Ridge, and this is a place that is the eye of the storm. I mean, there's no other better way, right, I think, to describe that. And the Warfields, as you mentioned, move out of here, get out of this area before July 2nd. And Gene, why don't you tell us a little bit about what we know? And I know there's a lot we don't know about, and maybe as time goes on, you and others will learn more about it. But what can you tell us, at least up to the battle in here, before we go into the house, about the Warfields themselves?
Well, I can't imagine the feeling that they had. The Warfields, along with many other blacks, would move here from Maryland. And they made their home here, as we know, where we're standing. He was a blacksmith, and where he lived before, he was also a blacksmith. So they moved their family here, and unbeknownst to him and many other blacks, who would know that a war would begin? It would be about June, where he would pack up his family and he would flee this area here. Now, it's not sure exactly where his family went. A lot of the blacks that were fleeing at that time would go to places that had larger concentrations of blacks. They would move towards York, Harrisburg, Philadelphia, and later on Some of the family members, his daughter Martha would reside in Philadelphia. She would die there and then eventually move back here. Some of the other children, he had one child that died in 1879. James Warfield himself would die in 1875. Where he is buried at this time remains a mystery. In his will, he did say that he wanted to be buried in the Catholic cemetery.
Now the family's it's pretty large, isn't it? James Warfield's got kind of like a large.
Yes.
So in this house, right before the battle, how many people do we know how many people are here, Gene?
He has, and I can't call all the names of the girls right now, but I would say there were about 5, and then he and his wife.
And then he and his
now,
wife.
He was married before.
Okay.
And somewhere along the line, I read that there was a separation, but then I read that his first wife had passed on.
Yeah.
And then his wife at the time of his death was Sarah Jane. And I'm not exactly sure when she passed away.
Okay.
But yes, this house was quite full, and I can't wait to go inside to see exactly.
This is sort of special. One of the things that we're doing with this series is we're going to places that normally aren't open, like to the public. So we really appreciate our National Park Service partners giving us special permission to go in here. We appreciate John and Gene being here with us today to go over some of this history. I don't think it's undiscovered history, but it's history that hasn't been told.
Exactly.
And it's really great that this house remains preserved. I remember as a kid driving by and seeing what this house looked like with an additional story on it. Now it's being rehabilitated and put back here. It's taken some years to do that. Look, everything worthwhile takes time. And that's exactly what happened here at the Warfield house. And what's great is for generations to come, this is going to be preserved. And the story of James Warfield is going to be told. So John, why don't you give us a entry in, and let's
sure thing. So this is the interior, and of course I do need to mention and just talk about the incredible work our expert preservationists did with this property. As you mentioned, Wayne, there used to be many additions onto this home. At the time of the battle, it was 1.5 stories. I remember it being 2.5. There was a 2 or 3 car garage just off to the south and a breezeway in between, additions on the back, a driveway. So our expert team of stoneworkers, of carpenters, of preservationists had just did an amazing job in taking it back to its 1863 footprint.
And take a look at that. So we have some of the floor missing. It's down to the bare walls.
The park acquired this property in 1973.
Okay.
I'm sorry, 1974, but had arranged a life estate with the then owners of this property. So
okay, wow, I guess I didn't realize that. So since 1974, the park had it, and then the people that had it lived in a life estate.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah,
wow.
They continued to reside here for, I think, an additional 29 years until 2003, if I did my math correctly.
Okay, sure.
So in 2003 is when the park really, took possession of this structure. And as you mentioned, during the 150th, this was our kind of administrative headquarters. So I do remember going up the stairway into different rooms of this addition to sign paperwork. So it's amazing to me to now stand here and look at the work. And you can discern so much history just from, what we see here. Mm-hmm.
Now, John, is part of the flooring, do you know where some of this is original?
As far as I know, this is original flooring. Wow. As far as I know. Now, I could be mistaken about that, and I think our preservation team, looked underneath. We're standing over top of the cellar, and looking up from the bottom, they were able to discern how the wood is hewed, put together, the nails, so they do believe that this is original flooring. Over here, of course, there was a crawl space under here, and they left that kind of open to determine there.
Yeah, and those are the original beams. It still has the original wood on the beams.
As far as I know, and again, I'm not a preservationist by any means, but you can see that there was also a wall here, partition. So this was 2-room, and if you're familiar with the layout of the Leicester home or the Bryan property, it was probably much the same.
All right, that's in there. And Gene, you just said there were 7. You thought 7 people inside this home, and you can see here it's not very big. It's described as a story and a half, is my recollection. So would there have been? I mean, John, would there have been access up to, I guess, upstairs?
There would have been, yes, and I believe it would have been near the end of this partition wall here. So if we will look up at the flooring from underneath, I think the stairway did exit right here to the upper story.
Wow. Okay. And so, Gene, we know that the Warfields, what do we know about when they moved in here? You mentioned that they came up from Maryland. Do we have a time frame or?
They're listed in the 1860s census. Now,
down in Maryland.
Yes, in Maryland. Okay. So I say maybe around about 1862.
Okay.
They would be arriving to this area here.
Okay.
But it would be shortly after that they would be fleeing for their lives because the battle was taking, the battle was nearing or here at that time because they did flee in June.
And from your research, do we know that whether the Warfields knew someone or they had, what brought them, in other words, do we have any indication as to why they're here?
It's very interesting. There is another Warfield family here that was at that time, Jerome Warfield. Do not know if they were related.
Okay.
I do know that he was 15 years older than James, but we can't find if there's a connection. Between the two of them. But a lot of times when the blacks moved here, they knew someone. So, and you have a lot of blacks that moved here that are from Carroll County, Union Bridge and around that. So, and it's not that far from the Mason-Dixon line. So, and being the North, they're like, it's safe here.
Now we know that James Warfield was a blacksmith. You mentioned that, and we know that he knew some of the neighbors and befriended them, like Sherfy. I mean, there's some indication of that. And to your knowledge, I mean, Mr. Warfield would have had white and black customers. He would have had white and black residents coming to him for his smith talents. He would have been here practicing his trade. Now, do we know? The children that here, would they have gone to a segregated public school? What would the school look like for them?
Now that I was trying to figure out because there were some that were in school at that time. And I'm trying to figure out what school they went to. Did they walk into town and go to the school that was there? Or there were some one-room schoolhouses out around this area.
Were they integrated, Gene, to your knowledge?
You know what, I think, well, I know when 1834, when Thaddeus Stevens, there was a colored school just for the colored children, and that was on South Washington Street. 202 South Washington Street. And that was like a makeshift thing. Now that I was trying to look into, did they walk that distance to go in to attend that school? Because that was the only school for the colored children.
So when Warfield is here, and then, like you said, he gets here about 1862, they flee. And then, so when they come back here, this place is, I mean, Gene, there's a clean put into it. What does this look like? I mean, he comes back and he's got to be thinking, his whole life is wrapped up into this place.
He's devastated. He comes back to find burials around his property and his possessions destroyed, his orchard, and it's just a very, very horrible mess. And I can imagine if you're not used to this, death at this magnitude, that he just was beyond words. And some of the other folks too, and I know there's the Timbers recollection when he came back. He was just totally devastated, as I imagine that Warfield and his family was. And he had trouble selling the property too. That took a while for him to sell the property, and eventually it was sold, I do believe, to Mr. Eckenrode. Is that correct?
I believe so,
Yes.
yeah.
The Confederates, of course, are all around this property.
Yes.
There's indications there's folks buried here. Do we have indication that it was a hospital, John? Is there any indication?
No, it was likely just too close to the fighting. Now, it could have been a temporary place of refuge, for a wounded man, but likely not a established or any working field hospital. That would have been further to the west here, further behind us.
And I can't even imagine, like all his Smith tools and everything. I figure the Confederates, everybody, this stuff just getting hauled out because this stuff is valuable stuff for people to have. So when he gets back here, he's got to put this claim in.
Exactly.
And Gene, my recollection is it was like $400. He got awarded like $400. What some of the other folks may have gotten if he did get the money.
Well, it was an incredible too that he was a black man too, and to be awarded. But as I said, it did take a while for him to get the monies, but he did.
And we know he puts the farm back up for sale, like in 1864, but and then he moves away. But does he try to fix this? We know, or fix it may be the wrong word. Does he try to rehabilitate it or get it ready, or does he immediately just try to move away? As far as we know, how early? He's in town pretty early, right, or out west?
Yes, he's in the Cashtown area at this time, and I'm not sure about that Wayne, if he tried to rehabilitate the farm, and I don't know if you know. I have not read anything about that. He was just so distraught, and coming back to seeing what what he saw, and then plus trying to not being able to sell it. That was very frustrating to him also, and but he did have an account of everything that he lost.
And so to have this man come back, look at all this stuff, and then what's going through his head to try to figure out. I think he's got all these children that are here that he's got to take care of. So it looks like there was an original stove, I guess.
I think, when they began to remove the drywall and peel it back, they weren't quite sure if there was a fireplace or a stove, as you said. And when they discovered that, the thought was, all right, they must have had a cast iron stove in that location as well. And on our website, we have interviews with at that time, the structure's preservationist, and he just explained so well about some of the challenges they faced and some of the surprises they discovered. I think, from an archaeological point of view, little battle-related material, but I think I remember seeing and being impressed by toys, children's toys from the 1930s, 40s era were found, metal toys and all that. So, this was, as you said, we can never lose sight of the fact that this place was a battlefield for 72 hours. It was home long before and long after that. So we always have to remember those stories as well.
We also want to tell everyone to make sure you go to the National Park Service's website, www.nps.gov/get, G-E-T-T. Go on there and you can look at some of the images. They're tremendous. Certainly the outside of the building, the stone. This is the dwelling that James Warfield and his family would have been part of for maybe not quite a year when he actually got up here in this place. And then, he's established a nice life, and unfortunately the place just gets wrecked there. But what an honor it is to stand inside this home.
And I think so too. If these walls could talk, I would love to hear what he would say, what he had to say.
Well, Gene, I hope that he would have been pleased that we're coming back here to tell that history.
And I would think so too.
This is a history that really needs to be told. I just think that the Gettysburg Foundation as the National Park Service's partner helping preserve Gettysburg National Military Park, what a great illustration here
Yes.
of what the park has done. It took a lot of years to do it, but well worth the wait, everyone.
Yes.
And we're so grateful to be able to come inside. Our time has really come to a close. We've been on video for an awful long time. We hope that all of you will tune in to the Gettysburg Foundation's YouTube channel, hit subscribe, make sure you follow us on all the social media channels, and we're going to get more to come. Gene, I can't thank you enough for what you've given us here for the history of it. John, we thank you and the National Park Service for what they've done here. And all of you, next time you drive by Seminary Ridge, make sure you stop and you take a look at the James Warfield property here. Important property for a black family here. Yes. During the time of the battle, and we're just grateful that we can bring this to you thanks to our National Park Service partners for Black History Month. So thank you very much.
Thank you.